What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Draft Ranking Show. I'm Cody Carpentier, joined as always by my main man, Matty Kiwoom, here on a beautiful, beautiful Monday, about a week away from being boots on the ground in Indianapolis, Indiana for the 2026 NFL Combine. Today, we're going to be talking about the NFL Combine invitations. We'll do a preview, proper preview, next Monday's show on our way to Indianapolis. But we're just going to talk about some combine invites, some combine snubs. We'll talk through a couple of positions. I released my wide receiver rankings over the weekend, working at running backs right now. Working our way through, I'm going to be dropping my top 100 big board later this week on rosterwatch.com. Matty already has his up at Player Profiler and is doing an update as we speak. That will be up later on this week as well. So we'll talk through that amongst many other things. Please click that like button, click subscribe if you're here on the YouTube channel for the first time. We appreciate you. And if you're on podcast, of course, please leave a 5-star review. We're live every single night, 7 p.m. Eastern time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Twice a week with me and Matty, 3 times a week, just a solo 10-minute show for you, the people. Matty Kiwoom, how the hell are we doing?
You can smell it. You can smell. You know what I'm starting to taste just randomly in my mouth? Just
cocktail shrimp.
Cocktail shrimp, baby. It is that time of year again, baby. I'm excited. But you and I have talked. We talk. We don't just talk here when we record. We would talk because we're in the trenches. We do this for reals, and we're starting to realize something about this class is that it's good. It's just not all that exciting. Not all that. There's not a lot of sex appeal to this class.
I think that's probably a good way to put it. I hesitate to say, as I got done with receiver, a couple of positions will really like blink at you when you're having that conversation. How's the class? What's the class look like? You get through the offensive line, you get through the edge class, and you get through the receivers, and it gives you I haven't got through corners and linebackers, but those positions generally aren't like, what's this class? It's the meat and potatoes. It's the line, and it's the skill talent outside telling you what the class is. And Matty, I have a total of checking my one hand, 0 guys, 0 with higher than a 7.0 grade. I have one guy with better than a 6.7. A 6.7 in our grading scale is 6.7. Yeah. A 6.7 is a top 10 pick. I have one guy on the defensive line, on the offensive line, receiver, grade is a top 10 pick. David Bailey. That's it. One guy. And I got through it, and I'm like, Carnell Tate is looking like he's going to be a top 10 player. In a general class, I don't think he's a top 10 player. Kenyon Sadiq, you know how I feel about tight ends. I'll be honest, my wide receiver 2 is Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. Spoiler alert. And he is going to be a top 15 player for me. And I don't think in the average class, he's a top 15 player. Like this whole class, top to bottom, we've talked about quarterback quite a bit. We've talked about running back quite a bit. Those two positions are suffering this year. Receiver, the thing about receiver I'll say is that it's very deep with playable players. Not superstars. I think we'll get a couple superstars. I think we will. I don't know. It's going to be tough to really project who they might be. I think we talked about this before the show, but Zachariah Branch could be the best receiver in this class if you look back in 3 years. That's real. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really worried about the class.
Yeah, I just think it's not even so much that it's a bad class. I think that this class it's really just, a la carte. You pick what you want, and you might not see a discernible difference based on the actual skill set of the player. And we've been talking about receiver, and we're talking about our big board and how we build the big boards. Receiver, I mean, we talked about off show. You wouldn't sell your soul and bet on the number 4 receiver versus number 17 receiver. You wouldn't say number 9 is going to be so much better than 25. your rankings show that. In the process, of course, you have to rank someone somewhere. But the truth of the matter is, if you were tiering a lot of these positions, I've gone through pretty much every single position. There's not a lot of outliers. There's not a lot of I need this guy. Like, I don't know if we see any trades in this mock draft in the NFL draft. Like, what player is a team gonna go? I have to move up 5 picks for this guy
At wide receiver?
at any position. Truthfully,
Yeah.
at any position. Like, will we see some? Of course. Like, to say there'll be no trades is a bold take, but when you're sitting there and you're a team builder and you're like, ah, man, do I trade up because Jordan Tyson slipped a little bit? I don't know. Casey Concepcion's still there. Why don't we just wait and see? Like, I just don't see the urgency. There's no, like I said, no sex appeal. Sex appeal drives the crazy decisions. Todd McShay like to use these analogies, and I'll take a little walk with a Todd McShay analogy here. Go to the bar and you see a bunch of sixes. You're not necessarily like, oh, I want to go talk to this one. I want to go talk to this one. You kind of just hang out. And maybe someone comes to you, maybe not. Who cares? But if you walk in and you see a couple tens, then a bunch of fours, you're like, oh, I got to go talk before that person does. I got to go talk before that person does. There's urgency there. There's sex appeal there. You want to go get it. And notice how I didn't use gender, because this is being very cautious here, being very politically correct as I wear all green today. But that's the thing. There's nothing to go get. And I'm seeing that through almost every single position that I go through when I'm making my big board.
I think there's a couple of guys. Like, the problem is exactly what you just said. There's only a couple of dudes that are like tradesy, and they're not guys that have overwhelming talent and ability or statistical backing or analytical backing, like Keldrick Falk, Monroe Freeling, Caden Proctor. Like, you're like, sure, they're good, solid, okay. And people are like debating whether a good combine will help Keldrick Falk get up into that top 15, top 10 conversation. I'm like, I think he deserves to be there. I think he'll be there on traits. Monroe Freeling is getting a lot of helium right now, the tackle from Georgia.
Big time.
And I'm like, I get it, but he did it in the SEC. It's the same thing we kind of dealt with Amarius Mims a couple of years ago. But like, you talk about traits, it's like top to bottom, not a lot. Not a lot. Not a lot of, super long arm, big hands, big body, big athletes, Super Saiyan burners. David Bailey's a good edge rusher. Kind of skinny. Kind of skinny.
Small.
Kind of small. Yeah. But anyway, so that's kind of our overarching thoughts on the class. But I want to jump into combine invites. So we're going to be there next week. There's 319 prospects that were invited this year. A notable thing, I should have pulled a tweet up before. I thought about it and I didn't do it. We have I think it's a 10-year record for tight ends going to the combine this year, with 27 tight ends invited to the combine in 2026, 21 in 2025, 16 in 2024, 20 in 2023, 21 in 2022. So we've talked about the tight ends of the last couple of years, of course, Pitts and Kincaid and McBride and Bowers, and we could just keep going, Loveland and Warren, keep going. And it's like, now this year, there's more tight ends going to the combine than any of the last 5 classes. And that's just one of the many positions that I think we're going to be keeping an eye on, because I truthfully, when I've gotten through tight ends, I'm not overly impressed with the top end here, but I do think that the depth has some interesting guys. And yesterday I went through and was working on some, I guess you'd say, analysis or next level. No, it wouldn't be analysis. It'd be analytics based around the tight end position. Yards after catch per reception, kind of a notable thing I look at. And it's like dudes that I haven't even looked at yet, dudes I haven't even watched. Rohan Jones from Arkansas, not going to the combine, but Daquan Wright from Ole Miss is. Joe Royer from Cincinnati is. Oscar Delp from Georgia is. Riley Nowakowski from Indiana is. All these guys are going to the combine and are way above average in yards after catch per reception. Now, again, they're not hauling in 60, 70 catches, but they are still at an adequate level, 20, 29, 39, 37 catches, targets, and they were featured parts of their offenses this year. And it's like guys like that, I think, are the reason we're seeing this year's class show that depth. And I'm excited to have that conversation. We do get to Indianapolis next week because I don't full transparency. I've watched Sam Roosh. I've watched Josh Cuevas. I've watched Eli Stowers, Lake McRae from USC, Matthew Hibner from SMU. I haven't watched Joe Royer from Cincinnati, 6'5", 250, 9 yards after catch per reception, 88% catch rate, 12.6 yards per target, 4 touchdowns for the Bearcats playing with Brennan Sorsby, who's at Texas Tech now. I haven't watched him, but I need to, and I'm going to get to see him next week at the Combine.
Yep.
This class is deep, man, at tight end, but I don't know what it means yet.
Right, because you can deep. What we mean by deep is similar, right? Because deep can mean a few different things. It can mean there's a bunch of great players, right? That could be deep. But I think for this is that there's a lot of we don't know. Because Kenyon Sadiq, I'll admit, and I have no, I'm not going to hide behind anything. That we're transparent here on TDR. We talk the truth. I have him as my tight end 1 because I just keep getting told he's a first round pick, and I'm not going to be dumb. I'm not going to put my process in front of the entire NFL's and in front of the guys who, the national guys that do this all year round. So I'm not going to just completely ignore it, but I don't know if I see anything special in Sadiq. I know he's going to be athletic, but I just see a guy who just like doesn't. I've talked about it before. I don't like the players with astronomical potential that doesn't reach it. I'd rather get a guy that's has good potential but exceeded it, worked harder, did more than he was given by the grace of God. And I don't see that from Sadiq. And I think even if I was being just brutally honest in my building of the big board, he'd still be like tight end 3. But if I was an NFL team builder, I would not want him in the first or second round.
Wait, are
Because
you
I think
saying? Wait, did you just say Kenyon Sadiq is going to be a tight end 3?
no. I have him at tight end 1 because
Okay.
the world has told me he's a first round pick, and I'm again not going to be blind to the billion-dollar enterprises that are NFL teams and evaluations and all that stuff. But if I were to just parse out if I was a team builder, based on what I've seen, he would be my tight end 3 in the class.
Behind Stowers.
Stowers and I Koziol. I think that guy has crazy potential. He's a little light, but if you're telling me of the what can he improve, it's just getting bigger and stronger. That's just something you do as an adult, brother. So I think the guy from Houston is going to be has the potential to be really good. He's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the soft hands. He's aggressive at the catch point. I mean, he does a lot of the right things. And given that size, playing inside outside, he's able to do it. And on top of that, I mean, you brought up like the yak per reception. That number's not great. So if that's kind of your North Star when you're doing these things, he's not going to ping on your radar. But
Well, that's not
he
the
checks
North
a lot of
Star
other boxes
for tight ends. Tight end is just pure athleticism score. Like that's
Yeah.
always been the most projectable corollary to tight end success in the NFL is just purely what's their athleticism, how they test out. I think Coach he'll test well. The one thing I'll say is the measurements we do have so far through the process, which is not everybody, but half the class at the tight end position, Koziol drowns everybody in arm length. I mean, he's 34 and an eighth of an inch. The next closest is DJ Rogers, 33 6/8, and Justin Jolly, 33 and an eighth. And then most of the class is around 31 and a half, 31. Interestingly enough, Sam Roosh, tight end from Stanford, who had a really good week at the Senior Bowl, 605, 259, 31-inch arms, almost 10-inch hands. Coswell, 6'6", 245, 34-inch arms and an eighth. So 3 1/8 inch longer arms on each side. So that's about almost 7 inches total in wingspan, just in arm length, not counting torso. And their hands are the same, and Roosh is actually 15 pounds heavier and about the same height. It's interesting. It's just those are like the little things you talk about the traits. It's like that's the tight end. That's an extra multiple inches of catch radius there. Yeah, I think it's an interesting class. We haven't even really talked about Jack Endries from Texas or Max Clare from Ohio State. Those were the two biggest, most sought after tight ends in the 2020 5 transfer portal, and they were paid the most, and people attacked them, and they kind of had, stinkers for seasons, but they're really good tight ends that I think can fit into a lot of schemes and play a lot of good football. But I like guys like Justin Jolly. I think Trigg is interesting from Baylor. I don't really love Trigg, but I think Trigg is interesting. I like DJ Rogers from TCU. I think you can go all the way down the list. There's some interesting dudes here, but I think it's going to be a class that Miles Kitselman from Tennessee is one that, like, I saw him a year ago at the SEC Media Days, and I was like, this dude looks like that. Like, he looks, and they also they putting a tight end in a situation like that, like bringing him to a media days when you only bring 3 or 4 guys, tells you how he is in the locker room, tells you how he is as a leader. And he's completely like in the shadow realm right now of this class, because statistically he didn't really do a lot last year. They get 27 catches for 260 and 2 touchdowns. And you're like, okay. But in a class like this, a guy like that, being a 6th round pick, it's like, sign me up. Like, that's a guy that like played in the SEC for 4 years. And I know he can play football. I know he's going to be good in the locker room. I got to jump into Khalil Dinkins from Penn State. That's a name that, if you were listening to shows a year ago and people were pontificating about the 2026 draft class, Khalil Dinkins was one of the ones that was like, that guy could be a riser. And he had 14 catches for 160 and 2 touchdowns this last year as a senior, going through that Penn State situation last year. I'll be really interested to see how he tests up, because that could be a name that 604, 250, nobody's even got him on the radar right now. Got a combine invite, and we could be talking about, 10 days from now, Khalil Dinkins having the highest athletic. Would that shock anybody that the Penn State tight end showed up the most athletic guy in the field? No. Yeah. I think that's the art of this tight end class this year.
Yeah, and just a kind of to piggyback on the Dinkins call, because this position, it's funny because you and I, there's a term you always coin for guys, donkeys. And usually it's a negative. But donkeys at tight end, we see play on Sundays for years.
Yep.
And so, the kid from Tennessee you bring up, he's going to play because he can block. He's a big guy who could do things well for an offense that aren't statistically sexy. Again, no sex appeal in this class. Now, Khalil Dinkins, on the other hand, though, he's not going to be a donkey. He is going to shine because he's going to look fast, big, quick. But he does have that size. But I just wanted to bring that up because you brought up, how do you say, Kitselman? That guy is a donkey. But those guys can play on Sundays.
Can I tell you the guy that I called a donkey, like, in 2023 draft, and I just like, this guy's not going to be great, but he's just a big donkey. He's going to play football. Was Payne Durham?
Yeah, he's on the Bucks. Yeah,
6'5", 255 for the Bucks out of Purdue. Kitselman, 6'4" and 5/8, almost 6'5", 245. Right, Payne Durham. I don't even want to set the number. How many games has he played in in 3 seasons?
Games he's played in, so he's been on the field?
Yeah. 3 seasons.
36?
46.
Yeah, right. So I didn't factor in the play. He's always playing.
17 catches in 46 games.
He just doesn't do anything, but he plays. He is a valuable member of an offensive structure.
And that's what we're talking about here with a Kitselman type. Some snubs from the 2026 NFL Combine. We're not going to be here all day talking about all of these guys because we'd be here for 3 hours. But the number one thing that popped off was receiver running back. As far as like maybe the most apparent, there was Mikael Kamara, the defensive end from Indiana. I thought would have got one. Ethan Burke from Texas measured in really well at the Shrine Bowl. Expected him to get one. But I want to get your thoughts on these skill players that didn't get them. Jade Knott from Oklahoma. Kalen Black from Indiana, first and foremost. Those 2 running backs, did those shock you that they didn't get combine invites? Because we've heard that Jade Knott, helium pump for 3 years since he was at Cal. And I know Jim Nagy loved him. And then Kalen Black, I think Kalen Black's better than Roman Hemby of the two backs at Indiana. You love Kalen Black coming out of the Senior Bowl. I was shocked to see at least Black not make it. Ott, I understand, but from an injury perspective, you would think they would want him in Indianapolis to get him. Maybe he's done too many MRIs in his life already, but you would think that the NFL teams would want to get him to town to really see like what's wrong with his body and stuff, and see if there's potential for a career, because the talent is there with Jade Nod. It's just he hasn't been healthy in what feels like 3 years now.
The Jade Nod one didn't surprise me because at this point, if you're a talent evaluator at the NFL level, you could write your notebook is 15 pages long in this guy. He's been on the radar. Everyone knows everything they need to know about Jade Nott. The Caleb Black, though, that was very shocking to me, and the reason being 1,000-yard rusher, national champion, showed up, pretty well at the Senior Bowl, and him putting some extra speed on tape, him putting some extra movement, the things that happen in Indy athletically, testing wise, those are the things that can take a guy like Kalen Black and turn him from a 5th-round pick to a third-round pick, or a 7th-round pick to a 6th-round. They can make that type of player some money if the NFL gets to go a little faster than I thought, a little quicker than I thought. So I was shocked. I thought it was straight up disrespectful. And what is it about the Indiana Hoosiers that were getting the shaft? It felt like, there was a number of Hoosiers that were told not to show up to Indy, and you're like, why? Why?
Didn't they just win a championship?
Right. And even Kamara has been on the radar for years, and everyone knows the red flags. He's a little bit smaller, but he's an intense pass rusher. The numbers were there. Like, those are the type of guys that are like, we know this about him, but we want to know that. To not invite them to the combine feels like a disservice, because that's where you can learn about these other part of their game. Whether it be, I know he's an athlete, but what's he like above the shoulders? Get to talk to him. I know he's a good football player. I see the numbers, but is he fast? Oh, now we have a 40 time. Like, I don't know why those guys wouldn't make it. So, of the two running backs you mentioned, I get why Ott wasn't invited. I'm dumbfounded. I'm honestly just completely like shocked that Kalen Black didn't get an invite, and it of course means that now we know the ceiling of these guys. Kalen Black, unfortunately, as much as I like him, he's got to tumble down my rankings. He's going to, he fell out of the big board, and he's not going to be someone I talk about much, because if you don't get an invite, that says something.
Is Mikhail Kamara Elvis Dumerville?
Well, that was the hope.
Or is he Stanley Bapunga?
Well, that's what we could have fucking learned at the combine, though. That's the thing. When you have such a polarizing range of comps, and you just painted the picture perfectly, you need to see more of these guys, not less. Why wouldn't Kamara be invited? I don't get that one. I don't get it at all.
Yeah. Mikhail. It's pronounced Mikhail, I just learned.
Well, I'll never learn, because we're not going to get the punctuation sheet at the combine.
Ooh. All right, wide receiver. This one was deep. First off, Tyron Montgomery from John Carroll, the wide receiver that blew up the American Bowl and then the Senior Bowl. Cyrus Allen from Cincinnati, and Lewis Bond from Boston College, up in your neck of the woods. I comped Lewis Bond at the Senior Bowl to Parker Washington. Thought Cyrus Allen had himself a pretty good week down there at the Senior Bowl as well. Not as highly ranked, I guess, as the rest of this class. I got him as wide receiver 21 right now. But he transferred from Louisiana Tech and Texas A&M. I thought he was going to run pretty fast. I thought he was going to be a low 4.4 guy. So I was interested to see what he was going to look like next to, guys like Kendrick Law or Eric Rivers or Colby Young. Why are any of them invited and not a Cyrus Allen? To me, the thing about Tyron Montgomery, I did reach out to a source about that whole situation. I've always been in the understanding that they didn't send out the invites for the combine until after the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl, because there was still room to be added to said list or invited to said event. Turns out that's not true. Turns out they have the list, which obviously you're going to have a pre-created list before those events happened, because if you didn't, you'd be behind the 8 ball. But they didn't add them to the list. I mean, that means enough teams and Blesto and NFLS didn't want or didn't need to see Tyrone Montgomery at the NFL Combine, which I thought was bananas.
Bananas.
It sounds like he's probably going to be going to the Toledo Pro Day. Potential, that's not locked in, but that's like the rumor right now with Montgomery. I would have rather seen him maybe go to like Ohio State or Pittsburgh to play with a competent quarterback, but he's potentially going to go to Toledo. We'll see what happens there. And then, like I said, Lewis Bond and Cyrus Allen, the other two that jumped off. Did you have any of these guys ranked aggressively coming into finding out they're not going to be at the Combine anymore?
Montgomery, of course, that showing at the Senior Bowl deserved, it warranted a cosmic rocket up the rankings. And I don't know what this means, because he's kind of a unicorn in this regard. D3 guy, came out of nowhere, he comes down to the Senior Bowl and does not just it's one thing when you go to the Senior Bowl, and you know this, you've been down there many years. It's one thing to have a play, a highlight. It's one thing to do a number of things really well. And he was creating separation on intermediate routes. He was mossing fools, as the kids say. So he was doing so much that I'm shocked that an NFL team didn't want to wedge him in. But I didn't have any of the other guys ranked super high. I do think that the Lewis Bond is a snub. When it just like it makes you, it pulls on your heartstrings a little bit, because you just understand how hard these kids work.
Yeah.
And you see a guy like Lewis Bond, who's been in college for 5 years, have his best year yet on a team that really sucked. BC super underperformed, yet he was still right around 1,000 yards. He was just under, I think it was like 993. So I'm 7 yards short, 1 first down short of 1,000 yards. Goes to the Senior Bowl, like you said, doesn't wow, but shows it up and performs at least to the point where you're like, all right, I could see this guy get drafted. To then not get a chance to go to the Combine and perform with the class, it just feels like, oh, it's so disheartening to see that some of these guys can put in the work, get themselves at the precipice, and still just kind of find themselves, left out. But in terms of my big board, this isn't going to shake it up too much, because none of those guys were in my top 100. Probably weren't going to be in my top 120. Montgomery had the chance if he went to the Combine and if he put it on wax and did all these things. So, sometimes when the NFL speaks, you have to listen. You'd be crazy not to.
All right, we got 2 more things I want to talk about, and then we're going to get out of here. We'll be back, of course, tomorrow. I'll have a 10-minute show tomorrow. Wednesday, we'll be back with Matty Kiwoom, and then I'll have Thursday, Friday, 10-minute shows before we head into the weekend. And then the Combine in Indianapolis, baby. We'll be traveling there next Monday. This was news in the college front. We're going to talk about receivers here in a minute, because I got a couple of receiver questions for you. Comps, projections, things like this at the tippy top. But first, there's this piece of news that came out over the weekend. Sacramento State, well, first off, North Dakota State's going to now be in the FBS.
Mm-hmm.
Sacramento State, formerly of the Big Sky, will now be in the MAC. So we're getting these teams bumping up to the FBS level. North Dakota State's done really well at the FCS level. But there's rumored to be a incredibly interesting rivalry brewing in the MAC now with Sacramento State. Do you know who it is?
Sac State would have, if we're talking geographically, it would be Berkeley, Stanford.
No. This is a MAC. Maction. Think about the MAC.
Yeah, but I don't know who I don't know who Sac State's rival is. I'm looking at geographic rivals potentially. I don't know what the MAC rivalry is.
This is the thing. You have to have a rival in any conference or division you go into, right?
Oh, this is gonna be a manufactured rivalry.
Yeah, it's like
okay,
Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, Bowling Green. Like, it has to be somebody in this group. Massachusetts is in the MAC now. Football.
UMass, they suck. I think they won 1 game last year.
You could do the coast to coast. You could do the Sac State to Mass.
No. I think if you're gonna make this, you do Ohio, because the color schemes are the same.
No. Ball State.
Ball State.
And your trophy is a ball sack.
Yeah, that's the only right answer.
The golden ball sack.
The golden testes.
I wanted to see if I could keep a straight face while I told you that, and see if I could wind it together. I was kind of struggling a little bit, but no, I don't know if that's going to be a rivalry or not. But that's
It has to be now.
being conversed across the Twitters. Ball State versus Sack State. So ball sack trophy. Sorry for any young ears that are listening, but
Yeah,
be a
actually, we can't apologize. We just gave them the best joke when they go back to school after vacation.
all right. Here's my question for you, Matty. I got the receivers at the end of last week, and we just talked about some of them at the beginning of the show. But I want to get your thought process on, I guess, in a concise conversation. We'll talk about the rest of this class overall, the combine next week, testing is going to come in, et cetera, et cetera. When I look at the top 10, we'll call it the top 10, there's a handful of guys that kind of fit around a similar archetype. 5'11", 5'10", 180 to 195, 200 pounds maybe. Casey Concepcion, Makai Lemon, Zachariah Branch, Skylar Bell, Antonio Williams. That's 5 of them. Okay. Some people have other guys in there. If you do, that's fine. But having watched Concepcion and Lemon, are you worried at all about Lemon?
I think that all right, here's what I know. I know Lemon's a good player. Lemon was my wide receiver 1. I think in my big board 2.0 or 1.2, whatever iteration that was. My worry now has become the margin of error in terms of that profile has gotten very thin, and his bugaboo, if you will, when we're talking about predicting the profile, was speed. If he goes, into Indy or comes out of Indy, whether he runs or not, let's just call it through the draft process, and he ranks 4th or 5th in speed of the 5 you've mentioned, I do believe that could be pretty bad for a player like that, and especially a guy who's, was once a potential top 12 pick. But I don't see him falling out of favor, even if he is slow. But in that regard, this is where those moments can kind of become big time when you weren't really expecting to mean so big, because Concepcion's profiles keeps going up. Antonio Williams making DJ's top 30 in his big board. I mean, these guys, their profile are going up. Skylar Bell, 1,200 receiver last year at UConn. I think he's a fine player. I don't put him in the Makai Lemon talk, but again, those margins shrunk up a little bit. That distance shrunk up. And if Makai Lemon doesn't put on a good show, that's where you can find a little bit of worries.
These are, to me, 3 different groupings of stylistic players. And for me, I put Casey Concepcion in the Diggs grouping, which, as you and I have talked about quite a bit, that is, you're talking like Zay Flowers, Stephon Diggs,
Antonio Brown, that's the archetype, baby.
I'm not going to say it, but yes, that's him. Timothy.
That's my favorite. Now I've already been, you'll see in the big board update how high Concepcion has gone up my ranks. But after talking to you about it, of course, you sometimes, I don't know. You ever watch How I Met Your Mother?
Parts of it.
There's a scene in there, long story short, they call it the glass breaking moment, where something can happen all the time and you don't really notice it until someone points it out and it goes, and then you always notice it. You put the Diggs label on them, all of a sudden those highlights start a little bit more Diggsy, which means I like them a little bit more than I did before. It was my glass breaking moment. And, I think Concepcion has a lot of room, and now we're seeing him being riddled all over round 1. So we're seeing a guy who's going to go round 1 in the NFL draft. So that's the rocket ship you need to be on.
So I have him in that category in that conversation where I call that kind of a slot X, where that guy's got he's got a little bit there in the dynamic front that I think he could potentially take that step. It's not quite like a Chase, a Jefferson, a Neighbors level dynamism, but it's like what Diggs has. Like Diggs has enough to get the gas. Like he has enough gas in the tank to get almost to the top of the mountain, whereas like Chase and Neighbors are catching air over that thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Makai Lemon on the other front, he's listed at 5'11", 195. Now, if you watch these guys back to back and you lump in an Antonio Williams and you lump in a Skylar Bell, I'm worried. I talked in the last show, a couple of shows about like, hey, you know, Malachi Fields' hands are 8 and 6/8. That's really small for wide receiver. I don't think they're that small. I think at the combine, he's going to measure in over 9 inches. I think he's going to stretch that thing out. He's going to learn how to open his hand instead of being like, you know, he's going to open that.
Yeah,
thing
we
up.
talked about this. Yeah.
He's going to have a lot bigger, right? So I also think that Makai Lemon's not going to be 5'11". I don't think that there's a chance in this land that Makai Lemon's 5'11".
Interesting.
I think it's more likely he's something like 5'9" and 6/8. And I think that's going to be a major problem on the surface of saying that guy's a top 10 pick. And people are going to go, whoa, wait. But they're going to, you're going to have a group of guys that say, well, I saw it on tape. I saw what he did. That's fine. I comped him to Golden Tate, and I'll be completely transparent. At this current stage, he's 0.01 points in his grading system away from being a first-round pick. I have him currently the second-round pick. Again, that's without testing, that's just film. People are going to.
And you're also projecting him to be 5'9". Don't lie.
No, I'm not. I'm on my eyes. Well, I mean, yes. So
if he comes out 5'11", bona fide, confirmed, you're going to bump him into the first round.
But that's not going to be what bumps him into the first round. I don't think you're understanding kind of what I'm saying here, though, is what I see on tape is what he got the grade for. I see a Golden Tate, Wan'Dale Robinson type with obviously tackle breaking ability, a little more dynamism. I see him as a 4.49 guy. I don't think he's going to be some 4.6 or something terrible like this. He's a guy that can separate and create. I think he was the alpha of that offense, even with Jacoby Lane being really good at the college level. That's a different conversation for another show. But I don't see anything near, that what I talk about with Concepcion, which is that slot X, which has those X tendencies at the NFL level, which is going against, like I've heard the Amon-Ra St. Brown comps, and I get it because of the helmet, and I get it because of the utilization at USC to a certain extent, but he's not Amon-Ra St. Brown, and people think everyone's saying it, and I don't see it personally. But that's one of my problems is what I see. And so, yes, you're saying if he measures in at 5'11", he's going to be a first-round pick. He might be, but if he measures in at 5'11", 195, and he runs a 4.46, you're going to go, the tape lied as far as how big he was. And I know what he can do. I still know he can create. He can create, and he can get open. He creates separation, breaks tackles, pretty solid route tree, not complete. Like things like this, that's not going to change. Then he's going to run the gauntlet at the combine. We're going to grade his gauntlet. We're going to grade all the on-field stuff like we have the last couple of years. That stuff can change. That stuff can upgrade. But I see more Golden Tate than I do. And Golden Tate, we talked about this before the show, with the comp I have for a running back in this class that we'll talk about on a different show. Really good football player.
Great football player, yeah.
But not a top 10 pick.
Right.
That's where my question comes in with Lemon. And then I get down to, and we can wrap it up here in a second on this, but like the Skylar Bell, Antonio Williams conversation, I have like a Deontay Johnson, Chris Olave thing, which is a whole entire different grouping where it's like that guy can play in the slot, but also be a true 2, moving all around the formation, and be a Deontay Johnson or Chris Olave, like be a dependable piece of the offense.
Right.
with a little bit of dynamism. And I think that those three molds, whether it's Conception, Lemon, or Williams and Bell, they're all really good. They all can play for a long time in the NFL. But I think in the hierarchy of dynamism and upside and ability, that's why Conception for me is wide receiver 2 in the class and takes the cake among those slot type receivers.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it just echoes back to, we're building this big board. We're trying to put these positions together, and at receiver, it's kind of take your pick. There's a few archetypes that we chase. There's definitely going to be production in this class. There's definitely going to be some guys who stick around in the league. Where they fall, where they go, where they're drafted, what players are we trying to predict? It's tough. It's going to be tough to try to predict right now.
All right. Matty Kiwoom, Cody Carpentier. You can actually go follow Matty on Twitter now. Why don't you plug it, Matty? Because I might get this. I might get the handle wrong.
I might get the handle wrong, so I'm trying to change it, but Twitter won't let me. Twitter really hates me. I've come to learn. It is the Game Plan FF, at the Game Plan FF, but look for that to change.
The Game Plan FF. The Game Plan FF. That is, we got Matty back on Twitter. Maybe he doesn't want you to go follow him. Maybe he just wants to stay low key. I totally get it. But you guys are the true day oneers. So we appreciate you guys. We love you. We'll be back on Wednesday with a little mock 10 top 10, trying to dial this thing in as we get inside near, I think we're around 65 days right now. I should have that number exacted, but I think it's around 65 days into the 2026 NFL draft.
Peace.